Hello, all. I'm delighted to welcome you to this event tagged Oil Crime in the Niger Delta. I'm Oluwole Ojewale. Currently, I serve as the HENACT Regional Organized Crime Observatory Coordinator for Central Africa at the Institute for Security Studies in Dakar, Senegal. Over the next half hour, we'll be looking for solutions to the largest resource crime on earth, the theft of oil in the Niger Delta. It's a growing phenomenon with up to 500,000 people involved in the crime, but one that is causing environmental devastation, ruining legitimate livelihoods, and carries huge risk for the people who are sucked into it. For many, including some in government, the problem has become intractable. Difficulties in policing, lack of viable job alternatives, and corruption mean many think the crime should be normalized. But with 40 million people relying on the delicate ecosystem of one of the world's largest wetlands, can we afford to do nothing? Today, we'll be asking policymakers, scientists, activists, and people at the sharp end what can be done and how can we reverse the trends. And for those of you who would like to learn more, ENACT have recently published a landmark report on the subject, which you can download using the link below.
ENACT is funded under the EU's Development Cooperation Instrument as part of the Pan-African Programme. The Pan-African Programme is dedicated to fostering development and cooperation across the African continent and supporting the Africa-EU strategic partnership. The ENACT consortium partners work with African states to enhance responses to organised crime through evidence-based research, engaging with policymakers, and developing the Organised Crime Index. The Organised Crime Index is a multidimensional measure of organised crime and its impact across the continent.
First, let's remind ourselves of what the crime entails. The Niger Delta is home to one of the largest oil fields in Africa, drilled and refined by major international oil companies. But at least 20% of the oil is stolen by locals, mostly through a process known as bunkering. Gangs find the pipelines and their technicians tap into them. They use pumping machines to fill up small wooden boats with oil, which is then taken onshore. At this point, the crude will go one of two routes. Roughly a quarter is shipped abroad, but 75% is sent to makeshift refineries, essentially little more than holes in the ground with huge chemical fires burning. Artisanal refineries, as they are known, make diesel and kerosene. They also cause massive pollution and are dangerously unstable. Injury and death are extremely common. So why would anybody get involved in something so dangerous and destructive? Let's hear from one man who spent many years stealing oil from the pipelines.
It is wrong, but we are doing that because we don't have no choice, because of poverty and no job. That was why we were swinging to that business. Very, very dangerous. The fuel and the fire does not marry. So in process, when this fuel is dropping, the gas catch fire. And when it catch fire, the person who is in charge of in the refining process got burned. From 2011 to 2014, in Egbemotor, we recorded more than 15 casualties that died. Then more than about 50-something that was badly injured with burns. The artisan refining, in fact, let me put it this way, so awesome. You see buyers coming from left and right. I made a hell sum of money. Even if when people are dying, we don't care because of what we are saying. Because of the money really they entice us to do without fear of it.
Now, to help unpick the problem, I'm delighted to be joined by Professor Neni Barisabe, a scientist and arguably the leading expert on the environmental impact of oil refining in the Niger Delta. We are also very lucky to be joined by Fine-Face Dunamene. Welcome to you both. How would you describe artisanal refining, Fine-Face?
Well, artisanal crude oil refining as it is the activities of youths in the Niger Delta, whereby they have to tamper with the pipelines to have crude and then take it offshore onshore to refine. And when they take it for refining, they get three products from there. They have the PMS, they have the DPK, and they have the AGO. Of these three products, their very much targets is the AGO, which is the diesel, because that costs more money than two other products. Meanwhile, they use the DPK, which is the kerosene, to support local communities from whom they have local social license that enable them not to expose them to security operatives when they come.
It is something that has grown in the past decade. Can we put a number on that growth and what has been driving it?
It's within the range of about 400,000 barrels per day, or even more, or a little less. But then a greater percentage of this quantity of products end up in the environment, polluting the environment, and making life difficult for fishermen and farmers. What is driving these acts of artisanal crude oil refining in the Niger Delta is lack of jobs and poverty. That is what the youth are saying. These products, especially the DPK, which is the kerosene, is not readily available. As a result of that, the process of artisanal crude oil refining continues to thrive because they are using this to bridge the gap of shortage of these products within the Nigerian energy sector. Government's failure to also make electricity available to its population is another reason why you have this process being driven.
Professor Sabi, can you describe the environmental situation in the Niger Delta? What difference does oil crime make to everyday life?
The Niger Delta is a very complex ecosystem. It is the third largest wetland in the world. And because of the nature of the activities, bunkering and artisanal oil refining, a lot of oil gets into the very sensitive mangrove ecosystem. Globally, it is recognized that mangroves is one of the most productive ecosystems on Earth. When we say the mangrove forest, we are not just talking about the mangrove plant. We are talking about community of plants and animals that interact and provide goods and services for humanity. So when there is oil spill as a result of artisanal oil refining, and even the waste product from the refining system, it will also kill animal lives in the ecosystem, like crabs, like periwinkle, that most women in the Delta depend on for their livelihood.
Thank you. To what extent are we able to say these problems are down to oil crime? And then how much of it is simply due to the fact that there is also legitimate refining going on by the international oil companies?
Looking at the nature of oil crimes, the fact that the business or the industry is not legitimate means that little care will be taken by the operators of those camps in protecting the environment. There are also operational oil spills in the Delta that are not adequately managed.
So, Fine Face, let me quickly ask you this. So why has this been such a difficult problem to solve, Fine Face?
So it could be that why the issue of oil crime in Nigeria's Niger Delta is difficult to solve is because the government's hand is inside one way or the other. The government has deployed security operatives that should go and stop oil crime in the Niger Delta. But my experience over the years have shown that the security personnel are aiding and abating the oil crime, making money out of it, taking bribes and authorizing it to happen. It is also becoming difficult to address because the government has not really shown that commitment. I know that sometimes in 2017, they came up to talk about the fact that they want to address the issue of oil crime through modular refinery as alternative livelihoods for youth who are involved in artisanal crude oil refining. Now, this is 2021. We've not seen any serious action on the part of government.
Thank you so much, Fine Face. Thank you very much to both of you for speaking to me today about the problems we face. But as difficult as they may seem, there are solutions. Let's take a look. I'm now pleased to be joined by Robin Cartwright and Nicholas Atampogri, the authors of ENAC's report on the ways forward. Welcome to you both. Robin, the problems we are talking about today have been around for years. Nobody has come close to resolving them. Indeed, they have just gotten worse. What is different about your report?
So the report's unusual, I think, in that it's non-partisan. We're not here to flatter the government or to flatter big oil or even to flatter the artisanal refiners. We're trying to present the realpolitik of the situation. And that really is that very little has changed. If anything, the problem of this huge damage and spillages has got worse. So the aim of this report is to spark an international response. The capacity of the Nigerian government alone to tackle this is severely limited. Their tax take is very low. The economy is fragile. The debt has been downgraded, and they have very poor homegrown refining capability. So the response that we're talking about needs to be an international one, a commercially focused one, and we hope that will be welcomed by the Nigerian government and the international community.
Nicholas, we've heard it already in the program that economic draw of oil crime is so great. You recommend we need to find alternate livelihood. But that is quite hard to do. What are the practical steps we can take?
Well, I disagree that it is quite hard to do. The reality is that, look, there are already alternative livelihoods in place. Just that the incentives for a alternative livelihood is lower as compared to oil. Now, when you're talking about livelihoods, there are 2 or 3 dimensions. First, the policy framework and the willingness to implement policy. As far as I'm concerned, if there was the willingness to address the issue of alternative livelihoods, solutions are there for the taking.
Robin, one of the key things you recommend in your report is cellular refining. Can you explain what it is and why it will help?
Yeah, what people don't perhaps appreciate is that refining is actually a scalable enterprise. Whilst we're awaiting these mega refineries like the Dangote refinery in Nigeria, it's been delayed again to 2022, but it would have a capacity of 650,000 barrels per day. But in the meantime, the legislation is in place to allow modular refinery, and these are refineries with 30,000 or 20,000 barrels per day capacity. And that can even be scaled down to a cellular level with a lower build cost of under $30 million. And these cellular refineries will be clean and producing 3,000 barrels per day.
Now, not everyone is as keen on these ideas, Robin and Nick. Ledum Mite has been an activist in the Niger Delta since 1990s and survived being on trial with Kensaruwiwa and 9 other executed protesters in 1995. Let's hear from him.
I'm not a fan of modular refining. Who are the people who are going to do this modular refining? These boys who are in my village or in the creeks of the Niger Delta, they are the people to get $100 million to do refining. At the height of it, 500,000 people were employed in the Niger Delta for these bunkering issues. So how will they leave that and queue up for maybe 100 job spaces? What is the mode by which you supply them the crude oil? Are they going to get it free? Are they going to buy it at what rate and to whom? Practically, I do not think it is a way of solving it. And the more you look, as they say, the less you see.
We're now rejoined by Professor Sabi. Robin, very quickly for you. You were watching the film just now. Doesn't Ledum have a point?
Well, he does, yeah. Ledum says there's a serious build cost to modular and even cellular refineries. And it's a major enterprise when you compare it with what artisanal refiners call a KPO fire, because as we saw in the films, that's just 4 oil drums welded together with an open fire beneath them, which creates, through the heat exchange, creates diesel. But what is attractive about the modular refining idea, despite this additional cost, is that it kills two birds with one stone.
Professor Sabi, what do you think of that? Do you think these recommendations could work for the environment?
I've never been an advocate of modular refinery or cellular refinery. I feel the solution is actually using nature-based solution. And by that, I would recommend investment in sustainable agriculture. If we invest in restoring the degraded ecosystem within the context of the UN decade for ecosystem restoration, will return the degraded environment back to the state that they can that they can become productive and support traditional livelihoods in the Niger Delta that is accessible to all.
Nicholas, do you agree with the position of Professor Sabe?
I understand where Professor Sabe is coming from as an environmentalist, and it does make sense. But I actually do not think there is an all or none or a mutually exclusive situation. The point being that whether we like it or not, oil extraction will continue to take place. When Robin made the issue of modular refineries, there's been an issue that I've been grappling with. How do we democratize the ownership of common property resources? In Ghana over here, there is an immense problem about the way in which mineral extraction is causing a lot of damage. The big mining companies go deep and get all the mineral wealth that they want. The poorer miners have to deal with the surface. Now, there is a suggestion that if the state were involved in operating a system whereby the poorer miners could be given all the capital necessary to mine in an environmentally sustainable manner, we wouldn't be facing the problem that we are having. To come back to your question, yes, Zabe has a point. No, we have to find a mix and match situation, because whether we like it or not, oil exploitation will continue.
Thank you so much. Professor Sabe, do you have any reaction to Nicholas' position, briefly?
Yes, I do. I think what we need is a more sustainable solution, not ad hoc solution. Nigeria has a very ambitious, nationally determined contribution to cut down gas emission by 2030. So if we now increase the number of outlets of greenhouse gases in the landscape of the Delta, then we are going to, there's no how Nigeria can meet that target.
Robin, in your mind, what are the biggest barriers to the solutions you are suggesting?
We need to keep this at the top of the agenda. It's fallen off the international agenda, and we need to get it back there because the damage that people are suffering is so significant.
Thank you, Professor Sabe. Now we have heard of the many issues making oil crime such a difficult problem to solve. But now let's hear from one of the local people trying to overcome those challenges. Martha Agbani's organization is training people to rehabilitate mangroves in Ogoniland in the river state in the Niger Delta.
We saw the level of disaster that came with the oil spills. You reach there and you meet everything dead. You go to catch fish. When you open it, all you find in it is benzene. Seeing what has happened, seeing the level of disaster, level of destruction, we chose the path to say, now they want to carry clean up in Ogoniland. And we know that for the environment to be restored, what we need to do is to see how we can get mangroves back. We train women. Now we have about 275 women trained in mangrove cultivation. But these women have been facing quite a lot of challenges. They suffer to get the mangrove seedlings or properly the pods, and that is because the Niger Delta, being highly polluted as it is, mangrove is already a threatened species. So it's difficult even accessing the pods. And so the few pods these women are able to get from far away are further being destroyed by this. Because what is now refining, spills occur. Even what they have in their jerrycans, as they are passing, those spills affect their crops.
We are now honored to be joined by Mike Cowing, who has overseen the Bodo cleanup in Ogoniland, a major oil cleanup operation in the Niger Delta. He has worked for UNEP. However, he is speaking here in a personal capacity. Mike, like Mata, you've had personal experience of dealing with environmental devastation in the region. What did you make of our story?
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting story. And yes, indeed, I've been involved in Ogoniland in oil spill cleanup for about 15 years now. I actually had the pleasure of leading the United Nations team that did the 2011 environmental assessment of Ogoniland. We investigated hundreds of spill sites. We prioritized about 67 major spill sites. We, as it were, wrote the roadmap of how Ogoni could be restored in a sustainable fashion. We estimated back in 2011 it would probably take between 20 and 30 years to restore the ecosystem of Ogoniland. That work is ongoing. We've recently investigated another 165 oil spills, which have occurred since our work in 2011. And just to put it in perspective, virtually every one of these oil spills related to either illegal refinery or illegal bunkering. So the environmental footprint and the impact on public health is extremely significant and has been well documented, isn't going away. It's actually growing in terms of the scope and the scale of the problem.
Thank you, Mike. So are cleanup operations ultimately futile while the crime is still going on?
Really, cleaning up is futile until you stop these illegal activities. The reason being, we're cleaning up oil spills, we come back the next day and the clean sites are recontaminated from the illegal activities that tend to happen at night. So to coin a Nigerian phrase, we're mopping up the kitchen floor, but the tap is still open.
Thank you, Mike. To what extent do we need new players, new actors in the process from the international community, NGOs, activists, to bring new ideas, energy, and finance to the table?
I think simply we need to get the actors to the table. I've been banging this drum for well over 10 years now and not making much progress. I speak to government authorities, I speak to the bunkers, I talk to the communities, I deal with high prep. And we've been pushing, there needs to be a high-level task force, map out the problems, discuss the causes, and then let's look at what the real sustainable solutions are. We need a basket of strategies which would bridge law and order, community engagement, livelihood development, and all of the above. So let's get serious about solving this long-term and indeed escalating problem.
Robin, how much of what Mike says on the environment applies to the other things we have been talking about today?
Yeah, it's absolutely linked. The social, economic, and environmental lenses are, in effect, hardwired together. So much of the social impact is down to the environmental effect, whether that's air quality, poor quality of crops that we've just heard about, or incredibly extensive water damage, meaning that basic fishing is off the table. But I think it also needs a really important financial backing. There's some very scary numbers knocking around of multi-billions of dollars needed to clean up the Niger Delta. And that's not affordable by the Nigerian Ministry of the Environment. We need an international response, and preferably one with some form of return profile.
Mike, are you optimistic about the future?
The problems are substantial, but they're not insurmountable. There has to be really sincere political and financial commitment to address these problems, but everybody has to be part of the solution. Everybody has to be at the table, have a voice, be heard, and then buy in to this initiative, buy in and commit to the solutions.
Nicholas, are you optimistic about the future?
I'm optimistic because change is a permanent part of life. When it reaches a situation whereby it is no longer in the interest of the political leadership, both at the state and federal level, to allow the situation to continue, then there will be the will to take action. Once that will comes, there will be a change to the situation.
Robbie, what can people be doing right now? How can the people watching
You know, the most important thing is to raise visibility, to talk to people, to raise awareness. We need to keep supporting this incredible work that Fineface is doing. You can contact him on LinkedIn, and Leda Mitai and Professor Zabi. and the stakeholder democracy network who've long been banging the drum about this issue, and then push our MPs, and all of our stakeholders for a serious conversation about an international commercial solution to this.
What a great note to end this on. Thank you so much, Mike, Robin, Nicholas, and Professor Sabi, and to all our guests for taking part in this important discussion. And of course, to you, our audience watching around the world. We have only been able to touch on the research of our guests today. There's much, much more to be found in the full report on the ENACT website displayed below. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
ENACT is researching the dynamics of these illicit markets, together with many more, ranging from arms trafficking to maritime crime, empowering states to implement evidence-based responses. All publications are available on the ENACT website.